Sure. So funny because I started my career at a post-secondary institution, Algonquin, many years ago, and I worked as support staff in Con Ed as one of the departments. There was a few departments, and in my late 20s, made a move to Toronto and ended up as an event planner because it was a very similar role to what I had been doing at Algonquin. So I was hired on with a professional association as an event planner. So that was sort of my introduction to events. My industry in that respect is really young compared to many other industries. So there wasn't as many options in formal education at that point. So I stayed with that association for a number of years, did a professional designation, which is a certified meeting professional, and carried on to a few other jobs and went independent on my own, which is pretty common with my industry in 2005. At that point, I realized that I loved event planning, but I also I missed teaching. One of the part-time roles I had at Algonquin was teaching in their continuing education, course lineup of computers. So I had been introduced to teaching, way back. So so with that in the back of my head, and I made a move to just outside of Toronto. I went back and did an adult education certificate, and then went to work on my undergrad. So I completed my adult education certificate in 2010, I guess, and my undergrad in 2014. And all the while continuing on with my independent business, and then had started teaching at Fleming College in their event management postgrad cert. And then when that was suspended, they hired me on to develop an event management course that business students could take as an elective. So I did that. So I was at Fleming for 10 years. And then all this, movement towards the end goal was, wouldn't it be lovely to teach full time? And I always kept an eye on Durham because I knew they had this amazing new Center for Food. I knew faculty from Fleming had moved over there, and so I was always watching their positions. And when the position came available in 2018 for a full-time faculty in event planning, it was, an alignment of stars, really, because I just applied to Memorial University to complete my Master of Education, because, we know that a lot of positions, full-time faculty positions, are moving to that level of credential. And then this position became available. So I was, so fortunate, and you know what I mean, that so genuinely, that so excited to be able to combine my passion. So now I get to teach what I did for 25 or 20 years, and then my my other passion of event planning. So I get to incorporate both. So so that's how I ended up here. My teaching style, I still like old school lecture to a certain degree in terms of concept, so building concepts. So my teaching style, I would say it's a mishmash of, there's always going to be, and I'm very consistent. That is one thing the students know, that there will be a PowerPoint, a series of PowerPoints, and then there will be additional resources to supplement. And we'll follow along the PowerPoint, but I won't spend inordinate amount of time on one slide, for instance, and my lecture style is chatting. I'm not reading the slide. I have a slide to back up what I'm saying. I have the ability to pull so much from industry knowledge from like many of us teaching at the college level, we have so much industry knowledge that, I make a point about risk management, for instance, and I can say, because this and this and this could happen at your event, because it has either happened to me or happened to colleagues, etc. So a little bit of lecture content, but then followed by real life examples and then activities. So I'm big on, okay, we're going to take 15 minutes. You're going to go do research. You're going to go find out, how this has, happened, whatever it is, putting them into groups. So now, of course, obviously for the last 18 months, groups online. So pretty explicit instructions around, what we're looking for from that activity. And then those activities, they all go towards whether there's a test coming up or an assignment, and they can pull from the learnings within their group activities, and they know that too. So they know that if there's an activity in class, it's probably going to be a question on an assignment or a test. So they're going to participate a little bit tendency to participate a little bit more when they know, there's a reason for it. It's just not trying to have them interact. So, I, absolutely, like I think we all do. I practice the UDL. So how can I allow them to represent their and demonstrate? Because the whole point of assessment is demonstrating that they know it, right? So I don't think that it's fair to assume that all students are able to demonstrate that in the same manner equally. So, lots of assignments, I'll say, you can hand me that in as a video, you can present to me live, you can, hand in a report. So I think that is my teaching style. And I would say that I'm very energetic live, and I try to be virtually. I try and still have the same sort of movement and not just a stationary head talking, but certainly live, I feel like I'm a little bit more dynamic. I'm sure we all do. Oh, stories. Oh my goodness, stories. And it's so funny because I'll tell you, years ago, when I started teaching in that post-grad cert, I had some feedback from students to the coordinator at the time saying, she doesn't bring it into industry enough. She doesn't she's not applying the concepts. Like I would give them examples of concepts, but maybe not talk about myself, because I was thought, oh, they don't want to hear about me all day. Oh my goodness, that's all they're gonna have to listen to. But it turns out they do enjoy that. So, sometimes it's weird because you're continuously bringing in examples because you've experienced that. But that is what they love. They love to hear, the good, the bad, the ugly, what has gone terribly wrong. And I'm so quick to share with them. Please don't do what I did, or my colleague did, or whatever. But I shared the good as well, right? And I think because I am so passionate about the event world. Like it's such a fantastic industry, especially for folks who want to travel or just love that level of energy. I think that engages them, because if they're genuinely interested and they're excited about the industry, those stories, applying them to the concepts that they're learning, I think that's what keeps them engaged. They don't have a choice. It is the event world is a community. There's no working in silos in events. So and it's not to say that I've not had run into some good roadblocks with students working on group work teams, but they do that from day one. In their first semester, they are working on their very first live event, and I'm pretty clear about expectations of teamwork, and there's no social loafing. So we do talk about, the dynamics of group work, and we go through the stages and learn that so that they can recognize it. But so, that part of community, being part of a community, being aware of their interdependency when they're working in groups, or just their interdependency as a cohort, right? So sharing best resources. So even as we're working through content, and especially around group work, I'll say, share your resources that you're finding with your classmates. Share that, because in industry, we share resources all the time. It is not a cutthroat industry whatsoever. It is a very collaborative, tight-knit community in the event world. So, start to learn that now. Share best practices with folks and help each other out. They don't have a choice. It is absolutely a community-based industry, and I start that off their very first class in their very first semester. I try as much as possible to be the first faculty that they meet, and maybe it's at orientation or whatever it is. But the first thing I say to them is, "Oh my goodness, woo, welcome to the industry. You are going to love it. It is amazing." And I talk about all those different things, and trying right away build that sense of community. These are your peers. They're going to be your colleagues in 2 years. So I think the group work has actually worked out better than I thought, to be honest, because I think it has forced folks to become much more collaborative in terms of sharing files. So as a for instance, I'm good with Bongo. Bongo's fine. Happy to change to Zoom when that happens too. That's fine. I mean, to me, the platforms are all very similar. Teams, though, I think in terms of file sharing, so I'll create a class in Teams, and then within the class channels, and that's the group work. And I think, and then they go into their channels and do their group work at the assigned times, and that tool for collaboration. I feel it almost works better online than it does than having them face to face, sharing documents, etc. So that actually to me was shocking, but it has worked well. We obviously pivoted to virtual events in the last academic year, and they worked very well. So we executed 5 excellent capstone, our second year graduating students, including the host appreciation workshop as well as the J Awards. And then my first years executed 5 virtual events, and it worked out very, very well. So I think the benefit to the event students is that they have been forced to jump into a world that was coming anyways. So, I have said to them, we've been doing virtual events for quite a while, since actually 1998 was the first one I did. So that's a long time, but we've now been catapulted into it because of the situation we're in, and that's to their benefit. So they're the class that are going to graduate and be very experienced and knowledgeable because they've been forced to do that. So I'm not sure that answered that question 100% around the teaching piece, but just in my own industry and for these students. The only thing I would say around the virtual is, and I've said it already, is I try and be, energetic and dynamic, but I still think that a body walking around the class, provides a little more energy to students than a face on a screen. I think as a student, because I have been a student forever, I feel like I've been a student myself forever. So even from that perspective, being enthusiastic, I think, is really important, and connected with your students. And that doesn't mean that 24/7, 7 days a week, but certainly your students feeling connected to you and feeling some kind of a not an obligation to go to class, but like you want to be there because you know the person, and you want to hear what they say. So I think that comes out of being enthusiastic and being engaged and being interesting. So telling interesting stories, and I'm not afraid to tell the students about what could go wrong because it's happened to me. So putting myself out there, really creating a vulnerability that, I'm not perfect, and this could happen to you too. So I think that element, so that enthusiasm and that sharing piece. I think you need to really be open to continuing to learn yourself and adapting to technologies, to learning styles. 20 years ago, there was less conversation. 10 years ago, maybe even less conversation around UDL practices and acknowledging how students learn differently. So just as one example. So I think that we need to always be continuously thinking about ourselves and our teaching practice, and are we staying up on what trends are, not just trends, that sounds like it's just hit and miss, but like our field will continue to evolve and grow, and we have to make sure that we're staying on top of that. And on top of that is that staying current in your other industry, right? So folks that are coming out of industry to teach at college level, well, I still need to stay up on what's happening in the event world and stay connected to the event world to make sure that my students are being exposed to that. So that piece is staying current, and then my professional practice is staying current. So it's a lot to ask, but I know that we can all do it, and I'm happy to do it. I'm thrilled to be in front of these students and sharing my experience, and I mean that genuinely. It's a great role to have. Tons of personal satisfaction from this position, for sure.